What's up, Eagles Nation, and welcome to Week 3 of the NFL season. And of course, the Eagles are taking on those Detroit Motor City Kitties, the Detroit Lions, and hoping to get back in the win column. Obviously, last Sunday night, as already went over, it was a L. Tough loss, a lot of injuries, a lot of poor play early, contributed to the loss, but you know what? It is what it is. It's only through 2 weeks. And now, hopefully, even with some injuries, the Eagles can bounce back and do what they've done to Detroit many a time here in Philadelphia and come away with a win. In fact, I don't believe, if I remember correct, hearing this, and it was some years ago, but I don't believe the Lions have ever won a game in Philadelphia in the history. Again, don't quote me on that. I think that's something I heard some years ago. In fact, I know the last few times at least that I've watched the Eagles play, they've never lost to the Lions here. They lost to them a few times in Detroit. In fact, they lost to the Lions the last couple of times they played them. Both those games were in Detroit. Of course, that Thanksgiving debacle game from years ago, and then Carson Wentz's rookie year and Doug Peterson's rookie year as a head coach. Of course, they lost that game, which was their first loss of the year in Detroit when Ryan Matthews fumbled the ball late in the fourth quarter, and that was it. But besides that, the Eagles have been pretty much perfect against the Lions, if not perfect against the Lions in Philly, including the game when they wore these wonderful jerseys. Some years ago when the Eagles celebrated their 75th anniversary, the Kevin Curtis game. And we couldn't manufacture snow here. So, I figured I'd go with something that represents an Eagles win over Detroit. Why not go with the wonderful canary yellow and light blue jerseys? We were all hoping that the Eagles would wear the Kelly Greens that year. It didn't happen. This was the throwback they went with, which is their inaugural jersey. This is their inaugural look. These colors were actually the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets colors, and then when they became the Eagles, they took kept the color scheme. It wasn't for a few years later when they would adapt the Kelly Green, and of course green served them throughout the rest of their history to date. So anyhow, I did mention snow because the last time the Lions were in Philly, it was a snow game, of course. Who could forget that one? LaShawn McCoy rushes for over 200 yards. Nick Foles is quarterback for the Eagles at that time. It was during that Chip Kelly time, but it is what it is. It was a W. The Eagles actually came from behind in that game to beat the Lions, and LaShawn McCoy dashed through the snow, and the Eagles got a victory against the Lions. Not wearing these, wearing their regular midnight green. I was either going to wear this or my old LaShawn McCoy jersey, so I figured since I didn't have any snow, I should just wear this one. But anyhow, so a little, trip down memory lane there. And I understand the Lions come into this game, what are they, 1-0-1, so they have yet to have an L on the season. They have yet to have a mark in the L column. And I think they're a better team than probably people give them credit for. They are coached by Matt Patricia, who the last time the Eagles saw Mr. Patricia was in Super Bowl 52. Just saying. And you look, he is a defensive-minded coach. Obviously, he was the defensive coordinator there for years under the hoodie and in New England. And, Detroit, I mean, it's not like I think it's going to be an easy game, for the Eagles, certainly offensively. And particularly when you have at least Deshaun Jackson out. Now, the jury's still out whether Alshon Jeffrey or Dallas Goedert are going to play. I would imagine that they're not going to play. But I hope I'm wrong. But you know what? It's a short week after this. They're at Green Bay next Thursday night. I don't know. Maybe it's one of those games that if they're just not really, feel like they can contribute, just keep them out. And hope that we have better performances from players such as Arcega-Whiteside and maybe sprinkle in a little more Mac Hollins. Hopefully Nelson Aguilar catches the ball. Would be good. Maybe get the tight ends a little more. Maybe get Zach Ertz a little more involved. And first and foremost, run the ball. They have to have a running game. You have to take look. I mean, if you're going to be without Deshaun Jackson, possibly um, Alshon Jeffrey, and Dallas Goedert. I mean, those are three big weapons offensively that you're not going to have, and three big weapons to pass the ball to that you're not going to have. And I understand that probably this week Detroit's going into this game thinking, well, if these guys aren't going to play, we better be able to stop the run. But at the same time, the Eagles have got to be able to run the ball. They have got to be able to establish a running game. And what's that going to do? That's going to open things up for the passing game. Last week, they did not try to run near as much as they should have, with the fact they had three big injuries to key players. And I know the running game wasn't very effective when they tried to run. It wasn't effective for either team, honestly. But even with that said, I mean, look, Carson Wentz is nearly getting himself, knocked out of the game, and you're still passing the ball over and over and over again. And I know they were behind, and that's part of the reason why you pass the ball. But at the same time, you have some good running backs. Use them. That was a game tailor-made, I feel, for Jordan Howard, and you hardly used him. I mean, Miles Sanders, like I said after the game, dancing around out there. I mean, it's I don't know. It just seemed to me it would be a more better game for a more downhill runner, a basher back like Jordan Howard, and this week could be the same. Now, will they use him? I have no idea. I mean, for all intents and purposes, they can come out, pass. But I do remember a few years ago when they lost at Kansas City and they really hardly ran the ball. And it was it turned out to be a close game. It was a game Kansas City, ended up getting a W there. This is of course before Mr. Mahomes took on the scene there. But they did lose that game. It was one of their few losses that season. And of course there was a lot of talk after the game that they should have ran the ball more. Where's the running game? You have these running backs, you're not using them. And then what happened? The following week against the Giants, they ran the ball, and certainly, going forward into that season, they did have a more balanced offensive attack. And I would hope that would be the case this week, certainly against Detroit, and this coming Thursday night against Green Bay. Even if you start to get guys back, I mean, it still would help them to have a balanced attack and run the ball a bit. And I've said this, a bunch of times already, and I'll continue to say it. It is a passing league. You're gonna pass the ball. All teams pass the ball, but at the same time, and when you have injuries to your two starting wide receivers and your second tight end, it would be nice to pass the ball to run the ball a little more, and maybe set things up for some passing plays after that. Now I will say this: I do think that you will see a better game from guys like Arcega-Whiteside, because all week he's been practicing as one of the top receivers, as long as Jeffrey isn't going to play. Now, we know Jackson's out. That was pretty much certain that he's going to be out. That was early in the week that he's going to be out, at least for a few weeks, at least for a few games. So Arcega-Whiteside kind of came into this game last week, I don't want to say completely unprepared, but not prepared to be a starting receiver. I mean, look, the guy's a rookie. He's not even third or fourth on the depth chart, and he had to be thrust in there. And I make no excuses, but at the same time, he had to be thrust in there with those injuries, as well as Mac Hollins. Now, Mac Hollins at least has had some experience playing in the NFL, where Arcega-Whiteside, that was really his big experience, and he struggled, and it's to be expected. So I would hope that getting a full week with reps with Carson as a number one, as one of the top receivers depth chart wise going into this week, I would hope that he would get those routes down that he didn't exactly have last week, and hopefully we'll see better play from him, as well as Mac Hollins, as well as Zach Ertz, as well as Nelson. The rookies and the vets alike, they all have to play better. And speaking of playing better, the offensive line has absolutely got to play better. And not for nothing. I mean, Detroit, I don't think that they're a top defense in this league, but they're certainly better than I think people would think. They, if the offensive line plays the way they did a week ago against Atlanta, it doesn't matter what the rankings are on a defense you're playing against. Carson's going to be in trouble. because that side of the line was absolutely garbage last week. You had a veteran in Jason Peters being beat left and right. I know he's older, but he was being beat left and right last week. And of course, Sayamalu was the proverbial turnstile last week. We can't have that this week. Absolutely cannot have that this week. And look, they've been told all week how much they stunk last week. They had to watch the film. They were probably cursed out by their coaches quite often this past week. They were put through the motions, I'm sure. So I would imagine, and I say I would imagine, that we'll have better play from the offensive line this week. But again, that's where I think they should run the ball. I mean, you have an angry offensive line. You know, you want to see them assert their dominance early in the game, run the ball, push the Lions off the blocks, and set it up. You know, set the tempo for this game. I'd also like to see the Eagles receive the ball if they win the coin toss this week instead of defer to the second half. I mean, the last thing we need is to defer to the second half. Lions get the ball to start, go down the field, score a touchdown at 7-0, and then, you know, the Lions set the tempo for the game instead of the Eagles, the home team. I know Doug loves to defer to the second half. That's just the mentality. That's what they do. But I do believe that this is a week that if they do win the coin toss, I think that they should receive, set that tone early, you know, prove to the doubters out there that they can score. Hopefully they can score in the first quarter. I mean, that would be nice. You know, wouldn't that be a nice thing to see? Now, there has been some talk this week, and I do agree. Carson Wentz, when he came back from injury last year, the first game he played was against the Colts. And if you remember on his very first drive, they scored a touchdown. Why? Because they had that tempo offense. And I'm not saying the Chip Kelly offense. But run some tempo. Get to the line. Make some, get the Lions tired. It's going to be a hot day tomorrow. It's going to be near 90 degrees here. It almost has that feeling. And it's kind of ironic that I brought up that game a few years ago against Kansas City. Right, because what happened the following week? It was that hot day, that hot September day, felt like an August day against the Giants. And if you remember, that was the game where the Eagles won the game on the 61-yard or 62-yard, whatever it was, field goal by Jake Elliott at the end. But it was a hot day, and the Eagles came out and they set the tone. They were running the ball. They had a good mix on offense. It was a back and forth game as it turned out. But the Eagles got the last shot in there, and they got they won the game on that long field goal. But it was a hot day. This is the type of day where you can tire out a defense if you play with tempo, if you're running the ball and setting things up for the passing game. It could be a long day for the Lions defenders. I hope it's not a long day for the Eagles defenders. But, it could be a long day for the Lions defenders. I mean, this is a team, not for nothing. This is a team that's used to playing indoors, not a lot of weather conditions and such. And here they come here. It's a hot game. It's a hot day so far this season. They played 2 games indoors. They played at Arizona and they played home at Detroit. So this is the first time the Lions are going to be outside. And it isn't, like I said, it's a hot game. I mean, these guys could get tired, if you set the tempo early and if you're dictating the play. And this is a game where I think, like I said, the offense has to come out firing. They have to come out scoring some points early, get a lead in the first half and build it. And then in the third quarter, fourth quarter, you wear down the Lions defensively. Offensively for the Lions, there are guys that I do have concerns about. I mean, look, not for nothing. Matt Stafford, over his career, has had some pretty good days against the Eagles, statistically. More so the games at home in Detroit, but he's put up numbers. He's a veteran quarterback, and the problem with this defense over the past few weeks is not being able to generate much of a pass rush against the opposing quarterback, whether it was Keenum in week 1 or whether it was Matt Ryan last week. Now, they did do a better job last week, and they blitzed more. They did so out of necessity, feeling, well, the offense has all these injuries. We got to dictate this game. And so Jim Schwartz, to his credit, made adjustments, and they did more of what they usually don't and brought more blitz packages and did different things. Now, they weren't great at disguising some of these blitzes, whereas the fourth down play was read pretty good by Ryan, and they had a really good play call for that. But at the same time, more pressure was gotten to Matt Ryan, and it turned into 3 interceptions. So, you got to be able to get some pressure on Matt Stafford. He is a veteran. There's not a lot that you're going to confuse him with. but you got to be able to get some, pass rush on him, get some pressure. And I understand they have injuries in defensive tackle; they're pretty thin there, and that's certainly a problem. But if they can just generate some sort of pass rush against Stafford, that would certainly be a plus instead of laying him back there having all day to pick him apart. And like I said before, there's a few guys on the Lions offense that do worry me a little bit, particularly if we don't get the pass rush there. And one of those guys is probably their top receiver in Kenny Galladay. And the thing that worries me about him is any receiver that lines up against Ronald Darby, I'm a little worried about, because Ronald Darby over the past 2 weeks has been basically beaten like scrambled eggs. Every every week they have targeted number 21, and I don't think it's going to be any different with Matt Stafford. Now you can help getting over a safety to help on with the with Galladay if it becomes an issue in the first quarter. But the problem with that is the Lions have 2 pretty good tight ends, and we've been blessed over the past how many years to have really good tight end play, whether it was Brent Selleck, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert. We've been really lucky with that. Well, the Lions have gone out this offseason. They brought in Jesse James from the Steelers. It was a free agent. And they drafted, all of a sudden I'm forgetting the guy's name, it's a rookie tight end out of Iowa. And I probably should have these names like on a piece of paper or something. A lot of this I'm just trying to do off the top of my head. But was it Hockenstein, I think, or something like that? But anyhow, they drafted a pretty good tight end out of Iowa with the 8th overall pick. And not for nothing. I mean, look, this is the guy that's going to line up in the slot, and that means that the safeties have got to be able to cover these guys. So that's going to be an issue too. And, not for nothing, but as we know here, if you have good tight end play, that's going to be, a problem to get with it, for a defense. And yeah, it's definitely something to think about, for this game tomorrow. You have a speedster receiver like Galladay, who's made big plays throughout the past few years, and you have 2 really good tight ends on the Lions. I really do apologize. I believe the guy's name's Hockenstein from the rookie out of Iowa, and then of course Jesse James. So yeah, I mean they, and the Lions are trying to do this, with the fact they have a former assistant coach from from the Patriot system. They're trying to build this thing the Patriot way. So they got their Gronk, basically. Well, they don't quite have Brady. But then again, who does, right? But they got their speedster receivers. They got Danny Amendola is there now. Of course, the former Patriot was there when Patricia was there. He scored a touchdown last week. So they have some speed at the wide receiver position, and they're talented. And they do have talent, in the tight ends. Now, their running game is better than it's been in for how many years, basically since Barry Sanders was there. I mean, I know they had some years where they had decent running backs, but they never quite had that big-time back, right? And they have some pretty good, they have an semblance of a running game more so anymore than they did for how many years. So it is something that you do want to take don't let them dictate, like I said, with their running game the way I'm hoping the Eagles do with their. So you do want to take that for what it is. And hopefully this Eagles defense is ready for it, because there is going to be challenges against the Lions. They like I said, they have weapons at the wide receiver and at the tight end position. They can run the ball with more success than they did years ago, and that does set up the passing game. So play action fakes, and it could be a problem. It could be a problem for a defense. And again, it's going to be a hot day, and one of these offenses could dictate things. I'm hoping it will be the Eagles. I'm hoping it won't be the Lions, but it is, this game on paper before the season started, I said, well, that's a lockdown W, but at the time, I mean, you're seeing this Eagles offense with all these weapons, now not so much. And I don't know. I mean, even if Jeffrey and Goddard play, they're not going to be 100%. And I know as you go through the season, no one's 100%, by the end of the year. But at the same time, these guys are just coming off injuries. We're without our deep threat in Deshaun Jackson. That makes this offense a little easier to defend. They've had some, not for nothing. I mean, last week the offensive line didn't play very well. They haven't been able to establish a running game the first 2 weeks. I would hope they do that this week, but we'll see. So there are question marks for this game, more so than I thought going into this game as this, when the season, the schedule was unveiled. I still feel the Eagles are going to win this game. I think it could be one of those games that might be a little back and forth. But at the same time, I mean, I think at the end, when all's said and done, I think as it was with the Giants those years ago, I think the Eagles come away with a close W. I don't think it's going to be a 60-plus yard field goal that wins it, but although that would be fun, as it was then. But I do think the Eagles continue their winning ways against Detroit at home. I think the Lions will continue to not win a game in Philadelphia, and the Eagles will come away with a close win. And it could be a low-scoring game. It very well could be. It could be a game like in the 20s. Maybe the Eagles win this game 27-24, something like that. We'll see. But, that's how I'm calling it. That's how I'm seeing it. Let's go Birds as always, and enjoy the game. And, of course, it's another week, so that means another Festive 4, and so let's get to it. Oh boy. Now that the shades are on again. That's right. Festive again, as Festive did in week 1. Festive went 3-1 last week, and like it was in week 1, the only loss was at the hands of the Packers. Festive's not a fan. So Festive so far overall is 6-2, 2 3-1 starts. Very impressive out of the chute there, Festive. And that's right. Belichick did tell you they were going to beat the Dolphins. Yeah, that wasn't a big surprise, though, to be honest. And unfortunately, and I will say this, full disclosure, I did want an easy win this week in my Survivor with the WIP suicide pool. So far, through 2 weeks now, I had to survive talk about Survivor. I had to survive overtime with the Chargers beating the Colts. And the Texans won by 2 points against by a point rather, by a point against the Jaguars last week. I mean, talk about 2 games I had to sweat it out. So this week, as much as I hate to, but you know what? There's a ring on the line, so there's some bling on the line for this. So I went with Dallas as my pick for the Survivor. I mean, look, they're playing the Dolphins at home. If the Dolphins beat the Cowboys this week, I do think it would be the most hilarious thing that could happen. But at the same time, I don't see it happening. And I think that's probably going to be an easy win for Dallas. And I would imagine I might have a game this week where I don't have to sweat it out so much for my pick every week. And I'm just glad at least I got past week 1 because that was a problem for me last year when the Saints lost to the Bucs. But I'm up to week 3 now. I picked Dallas to beat the Dolphins. I'm hoping that's an easy win. We'll see. But that's not part of the Festive 4, but that's my pick for the suicide pool for Glenn McNow's WIP suicide pool. So we'll see what happens there. But on to the Festive 4. These are the 4-pack of games. Again, just winners that Festive believes are going to win this week for week 3. And, of course, omitted the Thursday night game because Festive said, nah, they can have their Titans and Jaguars. So here are the 4-pack of games that Festive is going with. First of all, Festive likes Buffalo over Cincinnati. Feels Cincinnati, again, against the orange and black. My goodness. But yes, I know it's not the Flyers. So Cincinnati will lose to Buffalo, says Festive. Well, I guess Festive's learned. This week, Festive is not picking against the Packers, but is picking the Packers to beat the Broncos And if they lose to the Broncos, Festive says staying away from Green Bay the rest of the season. Because it's a no-win situation. Festive also likes the Colts over Atlanta. That's right, Festive, because the Falcons celebrated too much after beating the Eagles. What's that? Oh, boy, there's another one for Atlanta. Hey, Atlanta, why don't you go to the Falcons for change for $1 during a Super Bowl? Because they only got 3 quarters. Oh, says Festive. Oh, Festive, don't mess with Festive. I'll tell you that. That's. And finally, Festive likes that young rookie Murray on the Cardinals to help Arizona over Carolina. No Cam Newton in that game. And Festive feels the Panthers are going to start their season 0-3. And so the recap: Buffalo over Cincinnati, Green Bay over Denver, Indianapolis over Atlanta, and finally Arizona, the Cardinals over the Carolina Kitty Cats, the Panthers. That's right. We're going up against a feline team this week too. So hopefully the Kitty Cat teams will be 0-4. I know the Jaguars won, but they don't count for this. So we need the Eagles to beat the Lions, and Festive also wants Arizona to beat Arizona to beat Carolina, and of course the Bengals too. There's the other. I knew there was another one. You know, the old nagging it's not the same as it used to be. But anyhow, going against the Kitty Cats this week. So Bengals lose, Carolina lose, and of course we want the Lions to lose. So the Jaguars already played their game. They won. That's okay. That doesn't have anything to do with what we want, right? So, all right, everyone. Well, thanks for watching as always. Hope you enjoyed. Feel free to leave comments down below of what you feel this game is going to bring for the Eagles, or if you're a Lions fan, what it's going to bring for the Lions. Although I do remind you, haven't had any wins here in the history of the Detroit Lions. So hopefully that continues as we go through tomorrow. Afternoon game, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Kickoff, of course, on Fox. Eagles and Lions. And as always, let's go Birds! And I can say that fully this week because they're not playing another Bird team. So let's go Birds! And let's get that second win of the year, go to 2-1, and then we'll take on the Packers, the Cheesesteaks versus the Cheeseheads, that Thursday night game. All right, everyone, take care. Bye. Festive and I would like to remind you, if you enjoyed the content of this video, and why wouldn't you have? It's a wonderful channel. Go ahead and leave that like, comment below, because, you know, we always enjoy communicating, and go ahead and subscribe. And why wouldn't you subscribe? You know, because Festive has ways of finding people if they don't. Just saying. But anyhow, go ahead and subscribe. And once you do subscribe, make sure to click that bell icon. That way then you'll be alerted to any new content from this channel. And you do want to be alerted because why wouldn't you? So anyhow, enjoy the contents to come from this channel. And go ahead, like, subscribe, comment, click bell icon, all the stuff that, you know, you should be doing, because if you're on YouTube, you should be doing it. So go ahead and do it, and enjoy the YouTube-ness out there. Did that work? Hopefully. Spike the ball. No? Doesn't feel like it.